are back. You're listening to You Would Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington, and joining me once again, it's our one and only insider, Kevin Durso. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing well. Don't throw that on me because of all the...
Well, I know you're hearing things, so...
Yeah, I've heard a lot, right? No. Just...
Okay, so
you know.
I'm just gonna pull back the curtain here, and we are recording this on Sunday evening. Everything is still up in the air, and we're gonna talk about all of it here. As we get into it, I'm going to remind you here to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're really trying to grow over there. We're getting some new subscribers, trying to get those numbers up. Follow us on Twitter, YWT Podcast, Kevin at Kevin_Durso. You guys know the drill by now. Okay, getting right into it. As we sit here at 7:24 Central Time, 8:24 Eastern Time, on Sunday evening, Kevin Hayes is still a Philadelphia Flyer. Mm-hmm. Tony DeAngelo is still a Philadelphia Flyer. Travis Sanheim is still a Philadelphia Flyer. Scott Laughton is still a Philadelphia Flyer. But over the last 28, 30 hours or so, these are all names that we've heard as potentially no longer being Philadelphia Flyers.
28 is almost perfect.
Right. Anthony Sanfilippo put out a beautiful timeline article. I will be referencing that article throughout the show. Crossing Broad, Anthony Sanfilippo, at AntSanPhilly on Twitter.
Yep.
He's the guy you need to be following if you're following this Kevin Hayes drama, because he's got at least 4 sources according to his article.
Yeah, and hold the phone there. You're citing sources there. Is that where you're
well,
going?
He mentioned 4 sources, and yes, we are citing sources because we are attempting to do some reasonable work here.
Exactly.
Cite your sources, kids. Anyway, as we sit here, Kevin Hayes, St. Louis. Kevin, what do you know? What is the latest up to the moment?
Okay, so going off of a lot of, and I'm going to just nail them out, like kind of right up front here. Anthony Sanfilippo, as we said, Anthony DeMarco. Also on the St. Louis side of things, Andy Strickland had some of the stuff really early on, and Jeremy Rutherford of The Athletic is another one who's like these 4 are probably really leading the charge. I want to, I'll lump Charlie O'Connor in with Rutherford because same outlet, they were kind of working together on something that broke it down a little bit, and that's kind of, for the most part, that's the kind of core group that's really been giving you good information. There is some, I don't want to leave out people on the DeAngelo side. Elliot Friedman's had some stuff on that. Pierre LeBrun's had some stuff on that.
Yeah,
mostly I guess we need to just start from the beginning about what's out, like kind of what's out there, how this thing evolved, and then
yeah, we'll get into Tony DeAngelo in a minute. That is a little bit more cut and dried at this point
right,
in time. It seems pretty simple. The Kevin Hayes stuff is still pretty up in the air.
Well, and not only that, but I think that we're going to obviously have to kind of give some commentary on where things are at and why things are kind of, why Sunday has been the kind of day that it's been. Because pretty early on in the day, it was like, okay, listen, the one's being worked on, the other one might have a snag in the deal, and then it's been ironed out, and you're going, well, if it's ironed out, then where's the announcement, kind of, right? Like, we're still sitting here going, nothing is official, no player has moved this week.
Correct.
So I guess the best place to start is that the first report that was out indicated that there was traction around Kevin Hayes. Not really surprising, because
specifically Kevin Hayes to St. Louis.
And St. Louis, correct. Yeah. Now, 2 things that I find interesting that go hand in hand with this. Number one is that earlier in that afternoon, on Saturday afternoon, Nashville traded Ryan Johansson to Colorado. Similar type of move. A team has to eat salary. It wasn't going, the player getting traded to Colorado by himself was not going to net a huge return.
Right.
So, you kind of understood where it was going. And honestly, the first thought that I had when I saw that trade was, I don't know what this really does for Kevin Hayes, because there's a pro and a con to it. The pro is clearly a team like Colorado sat there and thought, well, it's better to take on a contract with 2 years left, or maybe 3, than to try to sign a guy for 6-7 years and spend the same kind of money. So clearly that's what they were thinking. Then the con was, if the only thing you're getting in return while retaining half of the salary on Ryan Johansson
is the NHL player.
Is the rights to sign him.
The rights to a borderline NHL player.
Right. Then I don't know, I'm sitting there going, then what's Kevin Hayes going to get you? Probably not much of anything, because it's another year. The contract, it's a little bit of a cheaper contract not by much. It's less than $1 million difference, but still, you're going, okay, like it didn't make me feel very confident about anything involving Kevin Hayes in the immediate. And quite frankly, go back to our show last week. I said I kind of thought that the day that we were going to find out something about Kevin Hayes was probably the second day of the draft. That was, and that wasn't like that wasn't me hearing things or anything like that. That was kind of just my gut feeling. That
speculation on what vaguely he's worth.
Right. That my thought process was that what he is potentially worth with not much leverage, knowing that kind of this is the end of the line here, and knowing they're going to have to retain salary, but probably not wanting to retain half.
Right.
You start to play with, well, it's not going to get you much more than, look, a third is generous, right? Like, that's what I was thinking. And,
yep.
I don't know. That was just my thought process because let's be clear about something right off the bat. And this goes in line with the reports that we've been seeing and a lot of the information that's been coming out. There's the potential for a first-round pick to be in this deal. Now, obviously, I think that some of the things with the first-round pick don't hinge on Kevin Hayes alone. I think that it hinges on a bunch of the other pieces we're going to get into. But I think it's apparently obvious that Danny Briere's main goal right now is, if I can get back into the first round, I'm going to find a way to do it in these 3 to 4 days that are left before we're there. And for sake of argument, St. Louis has 3 first-round picks this year, 10, 25, and 29. And obviously, okay, you're probably not talking 10 in this deal, but 25 and 29. And immediately also, again, my thought process goes to, you may not really be looking to do anything with 7, because 7's a good spot for you. I mean, it's going to be hard to move up to get one of the top-end guys in the top 5. Trading back, maybe it'll get you back into the second, like you hope to, but I don't think it's going to do anything like late first for you or anything like that.
But for the record, I could see, if you did end up with 2 picks in the mid to late 20s, I could see you packaging those to move up into the teams.
Well, that's what my thought was, yes. Right. That you could then potentially say, well, listen, if you get to 17, 18, and you've got 22, 25 or 22, 29, maybe you can work a deal there. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, we'll see where that goes. But for now, obviously, that's all speculation at this point about what pick, even what pick it is. That's not even really reported, right? So really, there wasn't much to it in the early going. It was, okay, there's the chance Kevin Hayes is getting moved. That's not really surprising. And okay, St. Louis is a team that I think unsurprisingly is looking for centermen who can play in the middle 6 and give you something. Okay.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's other hurdles to work through, the salary retention and what comes back and all that. But I wasn't really thinking it was some big blockbuster deal. I kind of just thought it's Kevin Hayes is getting moved. You've got a dance partner.
Great. Let's do some business.
What more could you ask for? It seems like the writing's been on the wall. And just like Hayes had kind of said in his exit interview, we'll probably find out more around the draft. Well, we are within a week. Here we are.
Yep.
And seems like here we go. Right. And then all of a sudden, one of the next reports that comes out, and I'm going to try to make sure that anything that I kind of that I give credit to where it's due. But again, it's probably one of the 5 at the beginning. There was a lot of stuff going on, so let's just bear with me on that.
Yeah. Yeah, we've all been distracted this weekend. It is full blown distraction.
Well, all right. So,
in
fairness, all right. So the next one that I retweeted was Rutherford, and he was one of the first who had mentioned they're working to finalize a trade for Kevin Hayes. The Blues are. Appears to be several elements involved, which takes time, but could be done today. But that's the first real mention of several elements, not just player for pick, retention, like several elements was like kind of hinting at whatever. And then it really started to pile on because Sam Filippo says it's going to be several names from the NHL roster included. You had, I think Strickland was the one who put out like the tweet about how Laughton and Sanheim and DeAngelo were all available.
There were rumors about a deal involving up to 4 roster players.
Right. Now, see, here's the thing. The tweet that had Laughton, Sanheim, and DeAngelo listed as kind of available in there was done very vaguely because you wanted to laugh and go, in trades in general, because like, yeah, that's kind of been out there a little bit that they were, no one's off the table.
Danny's listening, right?
Danny's listening. We already had talked about specifically last week. We had talked about Laughton and DeAngelo specifically. Sanheim was kind of a newer one, but I think that there's an understanding of why they would consider moving that contract. So, all right. And then it kind of all of a sudden it was like the realization hits like, no, we're talking same deal. And that's massive if it was all the same deal.
Enormous.
And this is, by the way, this is all without the mention of anything from St. Louis other than other than a first-round pick, probably. Yep. That was the only thing that was really being talked about. So you have all these different, directions coming at all these different things coming at you in terms of who could be in the deal, things like that. And then it kind of, as it filtered itself down, the story became Hayes and Travis Sanheim from the Flyer side of things, with salary retained on Hayes.
Yep.
For a first round pick, one of probably the later two.
Yep.
25 or 29. And what was believed to be Torrey Krug, because it was basically, it was like, hey, there's probably a defenseman in the deal. Somebody's got a no movement clause. It wasn't like
5 of their 6 defensemen have no movement clauses as far as St. Louis goes. The entire core has a no movement clause.
Right. And one of the things that right off the bat, like from the beginning, when it was just there's traction between a deal with Hayes and St. Louis, one of the first things that was mentioned was St. Louis is not on Kevin Hayes' list for no movement clause, so it's not going to be his no move clause.
Right.
So his no move clause doesn't even come into play. Travis Sanheim has a no movement clause that kicks in when the contract starts on July 1st. So that's not a problem either. So
it's not a problem, but it does put a timer on this trade.
Well, it's not right. Well, no, or you know what I mean. In terms of as of Saturday of this week, there's still a week to go.
But while we still sit here on Sunday night and the deal's not done, you start.
No, but it's not the holdup right now. It's not the holdup right now. That's not what's slowing this down.
Yep.
So all attention starts to direct to it's somebody on the St. Louis side, and all of a sudden, like here again, you got 2 St. Louis guys reporting on this, and they're basically just knocking them off one after another.
Well, it's not Parayko.
Well, it's not Parayko and Letty. It's not Justin Falk. So you start and
it's
Marcus
basically Scandella or Krug.
And Scandella has a modified, and the Flyers are not on his list. So now, like you've done it. You've cracked the code.
We have Sherlock Holmes it like
So it's pretty much Torrey Krug at that point, and that's when everything kind of starts up, and it's like, well, Krug is not going to approve this, even if the objective here is he's not going to be a Flyer. Like, even if the long-term objective is he's getting flipped almost immediately.
And once we heard it was Krug, and we almost immediately heard that Danny Briere was trying to work with Krug to figure out who he does want to go to and try to facilitate a trade there and kind of grease the wheels of the whole process.
Mm-hmm. So that, I mean, at this point in time, that's really where the St. Louis thing lies at this point. That I think at one point in time, this was a deal that, and Sam Filippo kind of said this also. Sam Filippo had said that it was 3 players in the deal from the Flyers, which, again, you're putting one of Laughton or DeAngelo. I'm going to tend to lean DeAngelo there because of the fact that DeAngelo is so quickly involved in another deal, or potential deal, pending deal, however you want to look at it.
Still pending.
Still up in the air deal.
Well, and this may be part of the reason why.
Correct.
We don't know all the pieces involved here. And I guess we can kind of briefly touch on DeAngelo because we've kind of come to him. We'll come back to Hayes and kind of finish the story there, but it does seem pretty clear at this point that Tony DeAngelo is going to end up back in Carolina.
I don't know if it's completely clear yet because I'll explain why. This was the story that was out late last night. Kind of, Friedman had something on it first. And again, said it was probably not going to get done until Sunday, which is understandable. It was kind of later on kind of thing. And Pierre LeBrun doubled down on it. Same thing. This is probably where this is going. And I think the thing that doesn't make a lot of sense to me, just thinking out loud here, is so this morning when everybody wakes up, all of a sudden there's a snag in the deal. And to me, there's only two possible explanations for what the snag in the deal is. And again, this is me just thinking out loud.
This is pure speculation.
Correct. The two reasons why there would be a snag in the deal are, number one, there is something in the St. Louis deal that is not out there that he is still involved in some way that they can't pull the trigger on the Carolina deal just yet, and that's the snag that has since been reported multiple times over that it was ironed out, whatever it was. Okay. So, but that would have been one explanation.
The deal's still not done. So.
Right. But the other explanation was, like, all I could think about it in my head, I'm going is, what's the snag? Did Don Waddell sleep on it and then decide I don't want to do this anymore? Like, that's the only other possible explanation. Like,
right.
They're not giving up any. Well, like Carolina.
Because it seems from the reports we've heard that it's a pretty straightforward swap. It's going to be
exactly.
DeAngelo for a low-level lottery ticket kind of prospect.
Correct. And 50% salary retained on the Flyers end, which, let's put it this way. Whether you do that now or whether you wait until the deadline, that's what you were going to do anyway.
Absolutely.
So, you know, and I kind of quote tweeted one of the trade report things and threw in like my 2 cents on the whole DeAngelo thing for one, you know, because we're almost up on a year of that, you know, since that happened in the first place. And, you know, kind of like I tweeted, it's, you know, pretty much that was a mistake from the beginning. It didn't make sense at the time. It was a way too big of a package. The contract was big. And at this point in time, getting anything back, even if it is
getting your third round pick back would be a massive win.
Well, and it's not going to be a pick per se, but like
I'm saying if you got one of the picks you traded for him back, any of them, it doesn't really matter which of them, it's probably a win.
Well, and any it's kind of almost anything at this point. Like a low level prospect, fine. Listen, it's better, you know, while retaining the salary, it's better than the two alternative, which are ride it out for the year and nobody takes him no matter what.
And he gets to sit in your locker room all year.
Or buy him out, which buying him out is really a 2-year process.
Yep.
So as far as I'm concerned, if you can make this a 1-year process and then he's off the books, do it. You know,
absolutely.
Like I don't understand, but it's like it's pretty obvious why the two guys that are at the center of these two trade possibilities right now are the two guys at the center.
Yep.
You know, it's not saying, like we talked about this last week, it's not saying Kevin Hayes isn't a good player, and you know, it's not saying that he's not good for a locker room. It's the way it all kind of went down, and it's the way that it's going to be with Tortorella, and
it's the way the last couple of years of that contract are going to look on a team that's on its way downhill.
Well, especially while he's in his 30s.
And actively feuding with the head coach.
As far, you know, I mean, we can, again, speculation, so to speak, but like it seems like the writing's on the wall there. I agree. And well, in the same, like, listen, the same thing. You can try to tell me all you want to that there's no beef between DeAngelo and Tortorella. He was a healthy scratch for the final 5 games of the season. You tell me what that's supposed to represent. Right.
That is at minimum a message.
Sure. And that's the thing. So, like, right now, those two guys are different from the rest of the guys mentioned in anything right now because of the fact that it felt like it was obvious that they were going to be on the way out in some capacity. The only issue we're having here right now is where and for what and when is it getting done? Is it getting done? Like, there's a lot of questions about that type of stuff, but I don't think it was any question that this was like, these were two things on the to-do list. You know,
everybody who watched this team last year knows that these two players need to be off your roster.
Well, and I'm sorry, like, to again, go back to what the head coach told you. Addition by subtraction. Like, I think that there were a couple people in mind when you say something like that the coach is thinking of, and his own actions kind of back it up. The thing that kind of is, you know, because we had these conversations for weeks leading up to the end of the season, and now we're kind of getting into the real meat of the offseason where stuff happens, right? And we kind of went back and forth with a bunch of other names, and, you know, maybe at this point it's a good time to go into this part because this is all of the other guys that, like, hey, what do we know? Where is it all at? Kind of stuff, right? If, you know, from 1 week till now, I think my thoughts have changed a little bit on some of these guys being mentioned. Okay. Like for example, Travis Sanheim.
You think it's pretty likely he's gone at this point?
It's not that it's pretty likely it's going to happen because obviously a lot has to happen to make a trade happen, as we're seeing right now.
Sure.
Obviously, we're on day 2 of trade watch for all of this stuff. But like, I just get the sense that, let's put it this way. If Torrey Krug waives the no trade clause yesterday, is the deal done? Because if it is, then Travis Sanheim wouldn't be a Flyer. But while this is up in the air, what's the likelihood that you got to think about the guy who's just sitting there, who probably has some idea that his name is all over this right now, and is thinking, I feel like Briere almost feels a little bit more of an obligation now to move this while he can, because it's while the no move isn't kicked in yet.
Well, and I was just about to ask, have you ever seen a player sign an 8-year extension with a team and then get traded before it kicks in? Like, and I'm not talking about a sign-in trade. Like, those happen on occasion. But
I know what you mean.
A situation like this where you sign this player with, presumably in good faith, to keep him for 8 years. You want him to be part of your roster. He's a guy that we've always kind of looked at as one of the members of the core.
Yeah.
And here we are, less than a year later, and he's on his way out.
I gotta double check this because I don't completely remember, but he was in a topic we might get to way down the line here in the show. When the Flyers
in the video,
right?
Yeah.
They did a jersey reveal this week for what the jerseys are going to look like next season, and he's in the video. And you kind of
that'll age like milk if he's gone.
Well, I you know what? Yes and no, because
they're going to have to reshoot at least his part of it.
I don't know, because you did what you wanted to do. He was still a member of the team the day that it came out. I don't think anybody thought at the beginning of this week that his name would get more traction than maybe some of the other names we have written down here. Scott Laughton and Travis Konecny. We were talking way more about them than we were Travis Sanheim at the end. In last week's episode.
The other two, just real quick to that commercial. The other two in that commercial were Tippett and
Delorier, I think. Which
it was Delorier in the black jersey. Right.
Right.
We'll get into all that later. Yeah, anyway,
But like, that's what I'm saying. Like, I kind of wonder if there's almost like this sense that like you got to do this right now. Let's put it this way. Regardless of what the details are in the reports and hearing things and all that, regardless of all of that, okay, Hayes and DeAngelo, we knew were kind of on the, like I said, on the to-do list, so to speak. But you're watching Danny Briere do more than just house cleaning here. Danny Briere is almost like trying to push the reset button in a very intense way, in terms of, like, think about this for a second. We've been saying for a while, like, maybe you don't go back as far as the Kevin Hayes trade and then signing him to the contract that he's currently on, because that did have some moments. The first year, obviously, nobody was disagreeing with it. And then 2 years after,
and we can play the what if game on, if Nolan Patrick's healthy, does that contract look better, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Yeah,
well,
we've done it 1,000 times.
And I'm not trying to do it right here.
No, for sure.
But but the DeAngelo deal or the Sanheim contract extension, those are things that last year we were sitting there going, what are you trying to do exactly? You're not going to be a great team this year. And like in a weird sort of, like, believe me, we had our reasons for disagreeing with the DeAngelo sign and trade thing, and I'm not.
But then he showed up on the ice and he was terrible.
Well,
for half the season.
Well, that was part of the reason why I didn't think it made sense, because I kind of knew what was coming when he played on this team versus the Carolina Hurricanes.
Because you traded Shane Gostisbehere and assets to get Shane Gostisbehere.
It's to an extent, yes. And well, okay,
they're the same player.
Pretty close. I mean, Gostisbehere probably has a little bit more defensive prowess, to be honest.
And DeAngelo probably has a little bit more offensive prowess, to be totally honest. So it probably balances out.
It balances out.
But you get what I'm saying, is you traded assets to get rid of Ghost, to make room to get Ghost.
Okay. Where I was going with it is maybe not at $5 million per, but I even kind of can understand a 2-year contract for a defenseman that you think maybe you can put next to Ivan Provorov at the start of last year. I can understand 2 years.
3.5.
But I can understand a 2-year term.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't have any problem with. Oh, no, I shouldn't say I didn't have a problem with. I did have a problem with the Sanheim contract extension, because it felt like we knew where it was going, and you just took one of your trade chips off the table at the deadline this past year. That was number one. But at least I knew what they were trying to look at when that goes down. It's okay. Look how he's still younger. I think because before last season really got underway, he was still 26. He's 27 now. He was 26. you're making a long-term commitment to him. You're thinking that, let's put it this way.
You're getting the rest of his productive career.
That's not even what you're thinking. You know what you're thinking? You're sitting there thinking that you just hired John Tortorella. You've got all these other things, in place. And you're sitting there leaning on, well, if Sean Couturier plays and Cam Atkinson plays and Ryan Ellis plays and all that stuff. Like let's be real about what Chuck Fletcher was saying all along. If everybody was healthy and everything was this, then maybe we have a decent team, right?
Like if ifs and buts were candy and nuts.
Pretty much.
None of it matters.
Right. But isn't it so interesting to see, because what I said this a lot last offseason. I don't know what their plan is. Hope that these guys are okay, right? Like, I look at everything that's out there right now, from the potential of trading Hayes to the potential of trading DeAngelo to Sanheim being in one of these deals or in a deal of his own, to the discussions that involve Laughton or Konecny or whatever the case may be. It's kind of settled in the last little while, but you get the point. I understand all of it. And then the Ivan Provorov trade, we understood all of it because it seems like there's Danny Briere is giving you a very clear sense of direction, which is clean house pretty much. I mean, for a guy who told you he wasn't going to tear it down to the studs, he's coming pretty damn close.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I know you were a person who was kind of in favor of maybe not necessarily tearing it down to the studs. And I think a lot of the direction of this rebuild is going to depend on what this Kevin Hayes move looks like. Is it just a first round pick? Is it a pick and a prospect? Is it, what is going on here? Are we tearing it down to the studs, or are we getting a team within the next 2 to 3 years, basically?
Right. And I think that there's elements of things that you saw from last season and obviously, you can look at a full season like Noah Cates had or Owen Tippett had and say, okay, there's something to work with here. You can also look at the small sample size Tyson Forrester gave you, or look at, you want to go smaller sample than that, go look at the World Championships that Cutter Gauthier had and say, listen, there's stuff there that you're going to want to keep around. Not as small as the Cutter Gauthier sample size, but Sam Harrison playing like he did in goal. You're sitting there going, okay, at least it's not like there's stuff that you don't have the ability to work with.
Right.
So I don't expect them to tear it down to the studs like that, but I'm just like, it's interesting because I've seen this a lot in the last couple of days, and people have tweeted this as a joke, and I understand why people are tweeting it as a joke. But I think you're also learning it a little bit firsthand as well, because a lot of people are tweeting the making trades is a lot of hard work reference again.
Yeah.
And to an extent, you're seeing it because obviously we're on we're going by
hour 30.
Right, we're like 30 hours into this whole saga of something might be happening, or at least this part of it will probably happen, but this part could be up in the air, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. And by the way, we will still circle back to Kevin Hayes and the St. Louis Blues here in a minute because we never wrapped that up.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know what we didn't wrap up about it, but
well, I was going to mention the fact that we at this point we've talked about Krug, waiving his no trade clause, maybe not waiving his no trade clause. We don't know where that sits at the current moment.
Right.
I know you mentioned something right before the show that sounded a little shifty, but that maybe he was considering waiving it.
The problem is there's so much being thrown around, you just don't know right now.
Well, of course.
The one thing I will say that I do agree with that is that I don't think any report that says he's not waiving it right now is completely final at this moment, because the biggest piece that you're talking about right now, grand scheme of things, because even the Sanheim portion of this, if the Sanheim thing is before the no move kicks in on July 1st, I still don't think that that's where you're worried about. The timeline really is Wednesday, because
that's fair.
You're talking about a first
you're looking
round
at first round picks.
Right. That's, I think, what matters. So I don't think Danny Briere is chalking it up as a loss here if nothing got resolved yesterday, today, tomorrow. Danny Briere is probably sitting there saying, by all means, let's go into Tuesday. Let's go into Wednesday morning with this if we have to.
Well, and I did want to mention, I think just seeing what Danny Briere is trying to do here, we've talked about him kind of taking some big shots and maybe tearing it down pretty heftily at this point. I want to praise the aggressiveness, the creativity, right? We've already seen a 3-team trade. We're talking about maybe trading 4 roster players.
Right.
We're talking about salary retentions. We're talking about this, that, the other. We're talking about every option under the sun.
Mm-hmm.
With all due respect, was Chuck Fletcher capable of any of that?
Well, I think that's the thing, right? Like, because this is where I'm kind of coming from the Danny Briere side of this, which is pump the brakes a little bit on stuff, because like if you really think it's possible that Ivan Provorov's already done, right?
Okay.
We got that out, like that's out of the way. We've already talked about what happened with that, and he's been Provorov was in Columbus earlier. He already did like introductory stuff. All
that's
that
weird.
It's done.
Yeah.
No, but it's done. It sure sounds like Kevin Hayes and Tony DeAngelo are going to be part of this, but can you imagine, like, if you go through this whole thing and go, it's Provorov, Hayes, DeAngelo, Sanheim, Laughton, we're gonna moving this, moving that, and then getting all these draft picks back. It's gonna be pretty remarkable if like you did that much work in 2 weeks, basically.
Yep, but trading people's hard, guys.
I think that you know what I think it is. When trading people is hard.
When you sit there and wait for people to call you. These moves feel like moves that Danny Briere is calling and saying, hey, Doug, I have Kevin Hayes here. How about a first-round pick?
Well, maybe not that much, but I feel like...
You know what I mean.
No, I do know what you mean, because what you mean, like what you're getting at is that it's, hey, I have Kevin Hayes here. We're willing to retain salary, and what if I threw Travis Sanheim into the deal?
He's doing things. He's doing his job.
Yeah, he's working. I mean, he is working...
attempting to make the Philadelphia Flyers organization better.
Because and I'm gonna tell you right now, the reason why you're feeling that way is because rather than trying to make trades where, like, so many of Chuck Fletcher's trades, when you go and look back on it, were designed to try to make the team better in the here and now.
Yep.
And either involving or centered around, I don't want to call them marginal players, but overvalued players. Let's
Fair
call
enough.
it that. Like,
Fair enough.
Like, I'm not trying to sit here and tell you Rasmus Ristolainen's a marginal NHL player. He's not. He would be on every NHL roster because every team would sit there and say, I can find a place for him. But let's be real about where he would play on most teams and how much money he would like. Right? Let's be real
and
about
the assets you're willing to trade
and what you're willing to trade for him. Exactly.
Yep.
So that's the problem. Was you're trying way too hard to make a trade. Like, is that the and I'm speaking out of pure speculation, and I'm not trying to harp on something that is long in the past at this point. I mean, even though we're only 3 months removed from it roughly. But is that the thing with James Van Riemsdyk when you're trying to trade that at the deadline, that you're so focused on, I got to find a way to do something that really makes us better now, and if it's not going to be, even if it is draft picks, and if it's not going to be 2023 picks in the higher rounds, like when he sits there and tells you I couldn't even get a 4th for him, well then, so you're just walking away from the table because that's the way that it is. Like, sometimes you got to accept
better
what
than
you're
nothing.
willing to. But it's sometimes you got to accept what you're going to get for him, and sometimes you got to do something like what Danny Briere's already done and go, all right, if I'm going to get something substantial, like get back into the first round of this draft, I'm going to have to trade Ivan Provorov. There's no way around it. I'm going to have to do it. And that's, that's why you're hearing Travis Sanheim. That's why you're, to an extent, hearing Scott Laughton. I don't know that, and it was funny because I got a text about, and this is not with information, but a text about, just see this thing about Laughton being on the table for St. Louis and a first and second being offered and being turned down. And I even said, I don't think that was true.
Right. Because Scott Laughton would be, man, you put him under Doug Armstrong and Craig Berube. Oh, my God.
Well, it's not even that. If you got offered a first and a second for him, what are you doing?
No, of course. You take it. You take
right.
it.
Like,
absolutely.
you should be taking it. But then again, I also thought about it. I'm like, okay, timing is everything. That report, which didn't have near as much substance,
I don't
obviously.
believe. Yeah.
Well, no, but that report was out on Thursday, which happened to be the day that Danny Briere did his pre-draft media availability.
Right.
And was sitting at the table telling you, if somebody wants to offer us another first rounder, we'll take it. Like,
that's not an accident.
No, but
right.
Then if it's right there for you, then why aren't you making the trade? I don't care how much
he would make that trade.
Right. Like, I don't care how much you think Scott Laughton helps the rebuild from a older player, from a mentoring standpoint. you want another first round pick or not? If it's there, you take it. So that's why I didn't buy that. And I think he's working really hard to do. Obviously, I mean, he's working really hard to try to get somebody's first round pick here.
Well, yeah, and what I wanted to mention about just circling back on Krug is that if it seems as though if he doesn't waive his no trade, and again, it's still a little fuzzy on that here at the moment, but if he doesn't waive his no trade, it does look like there is still a trade there that involves Kevin Hayes going to St. Louis. Mm-hmm. It would presumably not include a first round pick at that point, or the package would be different, or it would depend on the retention. You might be able to get a first round pick on Kevin Hayes if you're retaining literally half. Maybe.
The only issue that I
thought
about
from St. Louis, who has 3 first round picks,
I hear you.
Trade 29.
The only reason that I don't like the idea of the ideal situation would be that you retain 30% of Hayes' contract, which is, I'm not kidding, it is exactly 2.14. Yeah. So you get the round number for the team that gets him at $5 million. And there's an element where I understand that. I even thought about it kind of hypothetically speaking of, what if you retained 30 and got another team to retain 30? Man. And then this way you're playing with 214, 214, and like 258 or something like that. And it balances itself out so that this way nobody's paying more than $3 million for him. And that's how you make it work. And I think there's
through like an Anaheim or an Arizona, or
and I think there's still an element of that that's possible, because I think that's actually the type of thing you're going to try to do if Krug's the guy, because if you're flipping him anyway,
you're probably holding some of his money.
Well, that also
probably not. Never mind.
No, I think that's a possibility if you're flipping him, honestly.
With 4 years left on his deal.
Well, that's why I don't like it, because I don't. You only get so many slots. You get 3 slots of retention. You're already
if one is Hayes and one is Krug
and one's DeAngelo
and one's DeAngelo.
Now DeAngelo is only for the rest of this year, but what did we
talk about? Even going into next year, you only have one.
No, but what did we talk about after the Provorov trade? Sean Walker's a prime trade deadline candidate if he plays well, and you can't even retain half of his salary if that's the case.
And they've talked about the fact that that's basically all they're going to be doing on free agency day too, is signing guys who they intend on trading at the trade deadline.
Probably filling out the roster like that, I would imagine. Sure. By the way, speaking of filling out the roster, and this wasn't even an NHL move, but comical how yesterday all this stuff is happening, and on top of that, by the way, the Blues announced a signing.
Yeah.
And then the Flyers come out and hit you with, we've agreed to terms with Louis Belpedio on a 2-year, 2-way contract.
Man.
And everybody's sitting here going, come on, we're waiting for something for the other thing. And
I don't know where he's from, but you can't tell me Louis Belpedio's not from Delco.
It's pretty funny.
Hey, you know Louis Belpedio? Yeah, I know Louis Belpedio. His dad runs a sub shop down the street,
I got to admit, I appreciate that. That's pretty funny.
He absolutely went to Archbishop Prendergast. Come on.
He did not, but he comes from his hometown. He was
Bonner. I'm sorry.
He was fine. His hometown. He was born in Skokie, Illinois.
Oh, that's not far from me, actually. That's
Is it really?
Funny. Yeah, I don't think it's
in Cook County.
Oh, never mind. Okay, never mind. It's up in Chicago. Then never mind.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
All right.
Okay. It kind of took. This kind of steals your thunder, though. Apparently, it was a German farming community, not an Italian.
Oh, so he's Amish? Okay, that's even better.
Anyway, back to the. So, was there anything else to wrap up on the Kevin Hayes side of things right now?
I don't think so. As of this current moment, he is still, like I mentioned in start the show, he is still a Philadelphia Flyer. We do not expect that to be the case by our next show, which also a little programming note here. We're looking at probably about 10 days. We're looking at doing a show right after the 4th, kind of cover all our draft, free agency, etc. But I'll talk about that at the end.
Week after the draft is a really good time to kind of piece things together.
4 or 5 days after free agency opens.
So real quick before we move on and start talking about a few of the other names that are in here, we've already kind of really touched on Sanheim and Laughton a lot.
Yeah, we've hit the big ones.
And there's really no traction on Laughton but I do want to mention Konecny and Hart before we move on from that. But before we do that, since we're getting off of the Hayes and DeAngelo stuff right now, as long as we are on recording this episode,
yes,
there are like eyes are on any happenings. If something comes through in the immediate that we can react to, we will do it as we're recording. Obviously,
we are refreshing Twitter frequently. It is full blown distraction season in here. Like we have other tabs open. Let's put it that way.
Sure. Is it as distracting as warm up jerseys?
Listen, those can be pretty darn distracting, and this is a good time to mention. The NHL actually came out with a statement. We don't even have a graphic for this.
But it wasn't that they came out with a statement or anything like that. Because
you're right. That's
the
fine.
line you're talking about was
Bettman was speaking.
He interviewed Bettman.
Yeah,
and it had to do with anything that came out of the Board of Governors discussion.
And the TLDR is that the jerseys have become a distraction. And that the theme nights are continuing. There will still be Pride Night. There will still be Military Appreciation Night. There will still be Indigenous Heritage Night, whatever they're referred to as.
Cancer Night.
Hockey Fights Cancer Night. All those nights will still exist. But teams will not be wearing special jerseys in warm-ups.
Right.
And that is
Harry Bettman's exact word was distraction.
Distraction. And
It
goes really well when you consider we had a blockbuster on Saturday afternoon. Blockbuster discussions on a Saturday afternoon. Anthony Sanfilippo was trying to cover a Phillies game and break news at the same time. He had a hell of a day. I will once again mention his Crossing Broad article that was incredible. We'll link to it in the comments here. It's been a distracting weekend, and nothing quite as distracting as these jerseys, of course. So
apparently so.
They've gotten rid of those
scheduled loss for the NHL, but
so that no player feels uncomfortable or pressured into wearing whatever.
You already know, because you don't even have to finish the freaking sentence.
If you've been listening to this show for more than 30 seconds, you know how I feel about all these subjects.
If you listen to the last 30 seconds and heard what I said, you know how I feel too.
Right.
Scheduled loss.
Right. And they will still be a couple players will be like wearing jerseys and taking pictures of them, and they will still be auctioning some amount of jerseys off, but no, they will not be worn on the ice during pregame warmups. So if we're on jerseys, do we just want to touch on the new Flyers jerseys? We did mention it a little bit earlier.
What? We'll do it right after I do a couple quick footnotes on these last.
Yeah, for sure.
Because really, and maybe this is because when you're juggling so many things and other possible deals, you don't really hear much about the guys who don't have a lot of active traction at the moment.
Right.
So I'm going to get the Travis Konecny stuff out of the way really quick, because pretty much there's been not much mentioned about Konecny lately. That being said, I still think he has a lot of value. And I kind of go back to the Ryan Johansson, Kevin Hayes kind of conversation here a little bit, in terms of, if free agency is not going to be a big hotbed for like changing your team around, then I can totally see a team that calls Danny Briere and says, "Hey, Konecny, 2 years, $5.5 million per. What do I have to do?"
Yep.
I don't see any reason why you wouldn't at least attempt. And listen, I'm sure for Briere that's a hard sell, because you like what he gives you and you see progress. You see him being an all-star level player, especially on a team that doesn't have a lot of star talent around it. But okay. And let's kind of also go to the Carter Hart stuff really quick to kind of put some of that to bed, because as long as we do not have a resolution with the Hockey Canada stuff,
it seems unlikely
it's probably
we're gonna get a Carter
not
Hart
happening.
transaction.
Yeah. So I would pretty much say for sure and certain, do not expect a trade of Carter Hart in the next week.
No, and it certainly seems as though those results aren't going to be made public for several weeks at this point. They'll probably be buried at some point in the summer when people aren't paying attention.
They'll try.
That's how the NHL.
Scheduled loss.
Let's be honest.
Scheduled loss.
Right. This will not come out when Elliot Friedman's at work. Let's put it that way. Yeah, but anyway. like you said, until there's a resolution on that, we've seen it with other players from that team. It's just so difficult to do anything with those guys because everything is possibly on fire. Right. Yeah.
It's just completely up in the air until you know for sure and certain.
Because the last thing you want to do is trade for a guy and have that report come out and name him. And
sure, exactly.
You're that organization.
But that's the quick portion of it, because you've got, the Sanheim stuff is very much active at this given moment, as we said. And Laughton, I think there's, again, as much as it's a tough trade for the Flyers because you can see him being a mentor.
I love Scott Laughton, but I'll be stunned if Scott Laughton's still a Flyer on Friday.
I'm getting to that sense too, because it just feels like there's too much noise going on now. Like,
and
the
really
noise on Hart obviously died down while we still wait on Hockey Canada stuff and all that. But like, there's not even that much noise around Konecny right now. Like, to be fair, that's noise that you don't have to trade Travis Konecny this week.
Not right now, no.
You could trade him on July 4th. I mean, like, seriously, you could get through the first couple days of free agency and find out that that's better than somebody who's available.
February 25th. Year and a half left. Come on.
I hear you. I look, that's distinctly. You know what though, and the reason why I'm not disagreeing with that, but the reason why I'm thinking like such short term right now is because I think this is why Danny Briere is so active, because
I agree.
There's a recognition of this might be as good as everybody is to the rest of the league, and with that, and while they're not going to play another game, step on the ice for another practice, take the chance of getting injured, getting this, whatever the case may be. You're going off of complete 1,000% track record right now, and by doing so, you may get the best value in return that you will get for any of these players right now. Especially like we said, especially with the Hayes Sanheim kind of potential here. That was, listen, if Hayes Sanheim together to a team like the Blues gets you a first round pick again on Wednesday, you do it.
Yep. One thing that I will mention that does muddy the waters for Travis Konecny a little bit is the fact that Calgary looks like they might be aggressively moving some pieces. They might be, I don't know about blowing it up, but like kind of aggressively retooling and stuff like that. Some of the assets that they might be turning around might fill some of that same trade market that Travis Konecny is in, so that you might be bidding. You might be bidding against the Calgary Flames a little bit here in terms of maximizing value on your assets.
Well, that was also always an element with Carter Hart as well, because
there's goalies all over the market.
Right, you couldn't look at Carter Hart and then ignore the fact that hey,
John Gibson's on the market. Connor Hellebuyck might be available. Jacob Markstrom might be available.
Right.
The goalie market.
You can't look at those guys and not Hellebuck's the biggest example to me, because Hellebuyck is a Vezina winner.
He's the top 3 goalie in the world.
Right. You can't go and look at a guy who's truly an elite goalie and go, well, he's not going to have more of an attractive market than Carter Hart, who is capable starter, has elite moments, but isn't consistently elite. So you've got to go to the consistently elite guy is going to get bigger return and get more attention. It's just the way it is. And
Connor
that's without
Hellebuyck to the LA Kings, by the way.
And that's without the Hockey Canada portion. Even if that wasn't a thing, it still would be a tough market.
Who would you rather trade for, Connor Hellebuyck or Carter Hart, with the questions surrounding him?
Well,
because I think the questions surrounding him are more than enough to make up the age gap and the skill gap, frankly.
I hear you.
No, but I am interested. We're talking about these names on this list: Sanheim, Hart, Laughton, Konecny. We've already talked about Hayes and DeAngelo.
Yeah.
Is there a power vacuum in the Flyers locker room next year? If let's say 2 of these guys go, let's say Sanheim and Laughton are gone, because it kind of looks like that's going to be the case, and then flip a coin on Konecny or Hart.
I was saying, you're saying in addition to Hayes and DeAngelo, too.
Correct. Hayes and DeAngelo, I'm calling them out the door, because it certainly, all indications seem to indicate that. And if not, you can tweet at AntSanPhilly and tell him he's wrong. No, don't do that. I'm kidding.
I want to see the person who's got the you-know-whats to do that, if that's the case.
Well, because Ant seems to fully believe that Kevin Hayes will be a St. Louis Blue by the end of the week.
I agree with that. I think end of the week is also
by Wednesday. You know what I mean?
But no. That's very conservative to do, because it makes a lot of sense. Well, no, you know what? I don't think Kevin Hayes needs to be a St. Louis Blue by Wednesday by himself.
Okay, that's fair.
Because I don't know that it's a first.
It could be Thursday.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't, but that's why I said last week.
But
by himself, he might not be worth much more than a mid-round pick.
so is it time to start worrying about not having enough veteran presence in the room? And I'm talking real quality veteran presence. I'm not talking about Nick Delorier and Zach McEwen.
No, I know what you mean.
But like if Sean Couturier is not ready, and it's completely up in the air.
And
With the state of this,
that's the case. But
with the state of this team's medical staff, I trust nothing.
sure, I understand where you're coming from.
Ryan Ellis is still around somewhere, I think.
Don't rely on that one.
Okay, sure, but you know what I mean.
No, I know it. No, yeah, I know what you mean.
I don't trust this medical staff for anything, and if Sean Couturier is not there, who's the leader of this team?
And I'm trying to look down the list right now because
it's John Tortorella.
Well, no kidding. Here's my I have two different thoughts on this because number one, obviously, you mentioned Couturier specifically, but I assume you're also looking at Cam Atkinson, who could be
sure
back. But again, there's still a question. He didn't play last year, so there's a question nonetheless.
But he's also a guy who was here for 1 year before he got hurt, and it's a different situation than Sean Couturier, who's been here for a decade and a half almost at this point.
I got you. Because you're right. It's not going to be Ellis because Ellis is probably never playing again. Like
he probably hasn't met half these guys.
We've already been down this road, so I'm not going into that. I mean,
has Ryan Ellis met Noah Cates? I doubt it.
I don't know. I mean, Ristolainen, I guess, is part of that group because again, but again, it's like Atkinson. They've been here for the same amount of time.
Well, yeah, but Ristolainen was healthy for all of it. He was with the team.
Fair enough.
It's a different animal.
But this is why this kind of brings about my second point, and I this isn't going to be it's not going to be a good enough answer for what you want to hear because what you're looking for is who's the mostly established Flyer player who really shows you the ropes of being in this organization, right?
I got something for when you're done here. Go
for
it.
But my other answer was going to be, I don't know. Ask me again after free agency when we see what kind because here's the thing. I don't know if it has to be Sean Couturier specifically because he's got 10 years as a Flyer. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I think
leaders lead with tenure aside.
Well, no, which is kind of why again, it's why I brought Atkinson up, even though because Atkinson from an overall NHL veteran standpoint has the years. He has the years to be that leader. He does not have the Flyers years to do it, like the way that you're talking about. But by that logic, Delorier's got those years. I mean, hell, Joel Farabee's got those years a little bit to an extent.
That's fair.
He's if you're looking for a tenured player, I mean, if Konecny stays, then certainly you've got one with him.
Yeah, absolutely. Although, quite frankly, I feel like he hasn't been the same since Nolan Patrick left. Personality-wise,
a little.
I felt like he was playing hockey with his best friend, and now he's not.
But that's why my answer primarily right now is, obviously, there's not a good answer if you're looking for a guy who's been with the Flyers for a while. But my answer would be
Thank God Chuck Fletcher's not here, or else the Flyers would be trading for Blake Wheeler.
Well.
Tell me I'm wrong.
No, I'm going to try to find. Now, give me a minute, because now I'm going to go find let me go find some of the other stuff here, because I saw, again, trying to stick with our kind of core group of everybody who's got the most information about what's going on or whatever. I did see something about how Winnipeg was a potential pivot spot for Sanheim.
Anthony Sanfilippo was talking about it.
I think DeMarco also kind of.
Okay.
No. DeMarco brought up first, and then Sanfilippo added a footnote to it, and even said the thing with Winnipeg is they have the 18th overall pick, may not be willing to part with it for Sanheim, But let's just say, as soon as I saw Winnipeg mentioned, if you're trying to prize something a little bit more than what Sanheim's worth away, don't you look at what they want to move and consider taking on something like that? You know what I mean? That's going to come up. It's going to have to. And that's the only reason. I don't have any other reason to bring up Blake Wheeler otherwise, right? Blake Wheeler's got 1 year left on his contract at $8.25 million, which is look, it's steep. I'm not saying it's not, but it is only 1 year. There's a big difference between they're not flipping Torrey Krug somehow, if that's part of it, right? And then Blake Wheeler for a year.
Right.
but I look, I don't know. Wheeler could also be, Wheeler's got all sorts of stuff going on anyway. Wheeler's got, what is this? So it's a modified no move clause that he's got a 5-team list, which is
Canada.
probably.
Any agent in the NHL will tell you most no trade lists, if they're that limited, 5, 7, 10, whatever it is, a lot of guys have 7 because it's the 6 Canadian teams or the 7 Canadian teams. And if a guy has an 8-team list, it's the 7 Canadian teams and Arizona. Any agent in the league will tell you.
But
it's
either
just
way.
Nobody wants to pay Canadian taxes.
But wait, what I was trying to make sure I understood was that it wasn't a thing where, like, oh, okay, so list of 10 teams, so it goes down to a list of 5, I guess, right? Is that what the point was? Okay, so it's a list of 5. So, I mean, the option's open. It might not be as complicated as it seems, like with a 5-team list, and then same deal if you wanted to move them at the deadline to a contender. But look, we're getting way ahead of ourselves if we're talking about that. It's just the purpose of bringing it up was exactly what we're talking about, which is just there's a lot of moving parts. I did see the thing about Sanheim and Winnipeg being an idea, a concept, if you will. I mean, let's put it this way. Sanheim and Toronto was also a concept.
Man, that would be
wild. I don't, I'm trying to think of how that would, of what the reaction would be like, all of it.
I don't know how Toronto makes the money work on that, but
Oh, I hear you there.
Because they do not have a whole lot of roster space.
No, they do not. All right, so real quick, by the way, that's everything we've got. We'll continue to look until the end of the show, just in case anything new comes out. Do we want to touch uniforms really quick first before getting to the draft?
Yeah, let's touch on those. So we got a new uniform, and we heard about it about a day before it happened, and we got the reveal video, and it's kind of like a blend between that 90s Eric Lindros era black piping jersey and the last home jersey, kind of that traditional, orange front, white sleeves. But it does go back to the burnt orange. It's interesting. Obviously, I assume most of our listeners have seen it by now, if you're listening to this show. If not, you can find an image pretty easily. Kevin,
well, hang on a second. I'm gonna do something for you. So you just keep talking for a minute.
Okay.
I'm gonna.
Are you pulling up a picture? Are you throwing a picture in here?
Okay. I'm gonna try to. Yes.
Okay. So while Kevin pulls up that picture, I will talk about my feelings on it. I think my biggest problem with the jersey is the printing of the actual numbers, and I believe also the nameplates. Because they're not going to be stitched on, they're going to be printed in, and then also they will not be lined. Okay,
right, so
if you're watching on our YouTube channel, we have a video or a picture up on the screen at the moment. I think, like I said, I think my biggest problem with it is honestly the numbers. I think the numbers on the sleeves, look beer league and awful. Right, on the home jersey, you got your orange front, you have white shoulders, white sleeves with black. They look like electrical tape black numbers on right above the elbow.
So here, let me break down a couple of things really quick. And again, hat tip to Anthony Sanfilippo on this one.
Yep.
Because the understanding is that obviously one of the first things that you notice when you look at this lineup of jerseys is the alternate is exactly the same.
Yeah, and I want to put a pin in that. And I want to I want to break down the jerseys first. But then
we will. But because I'm making this mention really quick, so we don't even have to talk about that jersey, other than the one element that's different about it, which was also part of the home jersey anyway. So we'll get into that. But
sure.
Sanfilippo had written about them that there's probably a different version of this or a different alternate coming in another season. This is probably a placeholder for a year. They also, by the way, and not that we really needed Anthony to confirm this in an article on Crossing Broad as much, because we kind of already know how this drill works. I mean, what in February it's going to be the 5th outdoor game that the Flyers have played so far. So a New Jersey is coming for that event specifically, and
then they'll wear it a couple more times in the season.
They'll wear it at home. They'll wear it at home once. I guarantee that's probably what it is. They'll wear it at home once because the game is technically in New Jersey or in up, near New York.
No, it's in New Jersey.
I said
know,
near. No.
I know the Giants and Jets play there, but it's in New Jersey.
Hold on. But that's where I was going with that was because I'm saying near New York is in North Jersey because where I'm going with that is that if you had something that was close to where the training facility is, that is close enough to the center that it's kind of home-ish. South Jersey is home-ish. So the fact that it is a game being played in North Jersey would indicate that, I can only assume that by all accounts they will be the road team. So
I assume
toward their home game total. So there's going to be a home game where they wear whatever they wear for the stadium.
Absolutely, probably against the Devils. But...
All right, so let's go to these other two, the home and away, really quick.
Yeah.
So first of all, 1,000% love the burnt orange color.
Okay, me too.
It is.
Me too.
It just looks right. It feels right. There's everything about it, I think.
Every late 90s flyer is coming through your head. Desjardins, Leclerc,
exactly.
Primo.
I think it looks good. It actually doesn't look as. I know that there's a lot of people that really like the piping that goes along the shoulder that from the 90s version of this. I don't miss it as much as I thought I would looking at this. And I wonder if that's because the thing that I didn't realize that was different from the current to the ones that we are so familiar with from the 90s is the fact that the shoulder is wider. That the white over the shoulder or the orange over the shoulder is wider than it was on the other jerseys that they currently were wearing. Which does I can notice that. I think that
it brings the shoulder down a little bit more for sure.
And I actually kind of like that. I also, by the way, another change that it's very subtle. I don't know if everybody would pick up on it right away. I like the all black collar.
Yes.
Because that
I do like the all black collar. That stands out.
You can see the one behind me, by the way. I pointed it the wrong direction, but you can see the one behind me. How it would have just blended in
all the way around.
It just blended in with the shoulders, and it was a very thin black band. I kind of like that way better with it. Things like that. Like the black stripe at the bottom. I think that ties it together really nicely as compared to the way that the striping was handled before. So I like all of that. I like that. That works. So the numbers, not as bad as I thought they were. I don't like that they're not two-tone. There should be a border, an outline.
So the thing here's my thing about how the numbers look. They're gonna look fine on the ice on the official here you go jersey. Every fan-made jersey, they're electrical tape. For all intents and purposes, and I know not literally.
I know what you mean because
but the fact that you can't buy authentic jerseys, right? You can get close, but we're gonna get the crappy ones. That's just fanatics for you, but that's a whole different debate. But I did want to mention about the alternate.
Okay.
Obviously, they went with the old Stadium Series, the Pittsburgh Stadium Series jersey, the black with the thick orange band around the bicep. Mm-hmm. The thing is, and I know it's probably the one that's coming next year, the one that I think you said Ant Sanfilippo is talking about.
Yeah.
I have to imagine this is what next year's alternate is going to be. But it's just so easy. It's just right there, right? You know a little bit about Photoshop, right? You just where it's orange, you just fill that with black. Make it the same exact jersey, but on the home jersey where it's orange, that big orange swatch through the front, just make a black version. If you want to make the numbers orange, whatever looks good on the final product. But all you needed to do was a black jersey.
Do you know something though? And this is really interesting moving forward because I just had a thought about this that changes the game just a little tiny bit. Okay. There's two elements to the jersey from the 90s to this version that are missing that don't look bad on the orange and don't look bad on the white.
Okay. One of which is the piping.
Right. The piping is not completely necessary. I mean, I understand why people kind of long.
I long for it, for sure.
I know why people long for it. I'm just looking at it and going, okay, I understand how it's not because let's be real about something. It's got to have a little bit of an element of difference. It can't be exactly the same. Come on.
I mean, the jersey they just wore was the same jersey they wore in the 70s.
With a different orange.
But everybody hated that. If they had given us that jersey with the burnt orange, we would have loved it.
Well, but they didn't. And it's a business. That's like honestly, it's a business.
Fair.
What do you think that they want to be able to make some money
sell
off of this, and they will sell them. That's so.
Well, speaking of making money off them,
hold on. So it's not a deal because we'll get into that. I know where you want to go. So that like the piping thing is not a deal breaker for me. I can see how it works without it. And there used to be also where the cuff is, the black cuff at the bottom.
Okay.
There used to be an additional stripe that went over like where the sleeve was, right?
Which I will admit, on first seeing them, I really hated them not having that.
Mm-hmm.
I know we talked about it a little bit.
Yeah, and I don't think ultimately I don't think it mattered later on. Like it matters
That's
later
fair.
on.
It does
not
look,
a huge deal.
It looks better in this still shot that I'm looking at here on the screen than it looked in the video. I'll be honest.
Sure, and the other thing that you don't have anything to go off of is when they bring one out in person.
Man,
because we haven't seen it.
It's gonna be months until I see one.
Yeah, I know. But here's my problem with just replacing the orange with black for an alternate. Then where, aside from the actual orange that's incorporated into the logo, where's the orange? Because that black jersey in years past had orange piping and had an orange stripe over the sleeve, and that's where it was. So where is it now?
The collar.
Yeah. I don't know about that.
I think there's a way you do it. It makes it look good. First of all, I think you make the numbers orange. You might have to line them in black just to make them more visible, but you put the numbers in orange. You can also make that cuff orange. The cuff we were just talking about right there near the wrist.
So just hold on a second, because I'm going to go back because I want to find to make sure I remember every detail as accurately as possible.
Okay.
Okay, so again, yeah, so it was an orange piping, the orange stripe around the sleeve. The numbers on the sleeve were over the white shoulders were black outlined in orange.
Right.
So you know what? Like you're probably onto something with orange numbers there, even though like let's be real, the orange numbers fit on the orange jersey and
sure.
But then again, like you know why we're saying that, but like still. And other than that, like so as far as I can tell, the only elements of orange that you're going to find on a jersey like that, if that's what they're thinking of doing, is the number on the back of the jersey will probably be outlined in orange.
Yep.
To be honest, one of the things I'm very curious about that I don't know how I would feel about moving forward is because one of the elements that they kept was the nameplate.
Yes.
That the nameplate is black with white lettering on the white jersey and white with black lettering on the orange jersey. Yep. So I don't even know what a version of that would look like on a black jersey because it's always just been either
probably white with black letters or orange with black letters.
Either that or it won't have it because I think that the current alternate doesn't.
I think it does it not? Is it not?
Oh, it's orange with
orange with black lettering, right?
Well, then maybe that's where the orange goes. I guess
that's kind of what I'm thinking. Is you can get enough orange on there that it's recognizable, and it is an alternate jersey, right? Like it is supposed to be a little different.
Sure. Now wait a second. Is this what is this supposed to be what they thought they were doing for this, or like because I just happened to find like a potential rendering, and sure enough, now that's an interesting concept. So a potentially orange, like the numbers on the sleeve would be orange, like you said. That's an interesting concept. What if the cuff at the bottom was orange too instead of black?
Yeah, I said that.
That's an option. Like,
yeah, I think that you can get enough orange in there that it's a recognizable Flyers jersey.
And then the nameplate thing and things like that. Yeah, I guess I could see it. I'm just curious. All right, so do you want to get to the other?
And I guarantee you, by the way, if the outside of the collar isn't orange, the inside of it will be.
Oh yeah.
So you'll get your pop of color. But yeah, the other money-making revenue, other than just selling jerseys, is that the NHL teams, as of a couple of years ago, also have the opportunity to sell a sponsorship patch on their jersey. And we have seen the first Flyers sponsor jersey. Now, it is only on the home jersey. But that's I can't... I don't know exactly... Yeah, I don't know exactly who it is, but it's a Blue Cross network.
It's Independence Blue Cross.
It is Independence Blue Cross?
Okay. Yeah, now, and there's a reason behind it because obviously there's the new era stuff and there's a lot of new faces and all that stuff like that. So in case you didn't know, Dan Hilferty used to run Independence Blue Cross. So
Okay.
it
I
kind
was
of
not
made-
aware of that, but that makes a lot of sense.
So it's only natural that there's a connection there, and it's pretty easy to make that your sponsor. So I get it. The two things, because like I kind of shrug it off. I know people don't like it; they think it's an eyesore. I know, and I get why. I understand why, and I understand why. Like even if you're of the mind of I know why they have to do it or why teams are doing it. Can you just blend it in with the rest of the jersey? I would be fine with that.
Right.
If you change the color to it's white, I would totally 1,000% understand that. It doesn't match anything else when it's blue. I give you that. I understand where you're coming from. Otherwise, though, and I don't know if people realize. As far as I think there's people out there that do realize it, but I think there's people who don't. To my knowledge, anyway, the jerseys that you would buy don't have this unless
I believe that is the case.
Unless you get one that is literally advertised as on ice version.
Like we talked about earlier, it is impossible for fans to buy literally authentic NHL caliber jerseys unless they were made for a player.
But this is what I'm saying, because it almost creates a third category.
Yes.
Like it creates replica, authentic, and then on ice authentic, if you will.
Obviously, this is a topic that's been explored before, but the NHL is not the first league to put ads on jerseys. It's been a thing in European leagues forever. It's been a thing in soccer forever.
The MLS specifically, yes.
Not even MLS specifically.
Oh, no,
look at the Premier League. Oh, no, Every team has a sponsor on the front of their jersey where the crest goes.
I know. I feel like a lot of North American sports fans were introduced to this, though, through MLS because they were doing it. Like the big ones, big on the front of the jersey.
Certain outlets give you the option to choose if you want a jersey with the ads or a jersey without the ads, and the ones with the ads sell way better because it's what the players actually wear.
It is. I think that there. You know what? I think
so if you want to make a point and not be a billboard, and you want to support your team without necessarily supporting their advertisers, then you can buy the the non-ad one.
Exactly. Well, and it was interesting, okay, because this, I'm not trying to go off on a tangent with this, but it was a recent discussion because during the Stanley Cup final, there was a whole thing about where the patch was in virtue with the advertising and all stuff like that. And it's not even that it's a dumb argument. I think there's such a simple solution, and I don't the only explanation is money-hungry owners. Because which we know is the source of this stuff anyway. But
there's an advertising revenue.
But in my mind, okay, let's just hypothetically speaking here for a minute, because we already know where this is going to an extent. So the Flyers are going to play next season with Independence Blue Cross on the front of their jerseys 41 times, right? It's going to be 41 times. They're going to play 41 home games, and they're going to have that on their jersey 41 times.
Right.
They're not making the playoffs, unless a miracle happens.
They're not making the playoffs, Kevin.
Right, I know.
You can just say they're not. It's okay.
I know. But for a team that does, Vegas, for example, because Vegas was going to be the easiest one. They were the home team in the Stanley Cup final. As a home team, as a top seed in a conference, you are guaranteed up to 4 home games in the first round. And
you're guaranteed 2, but
you're 2, but up to. Well, I said right.
Okay,
you can have up to 4. So let's put it this way: if you're the team that gets to the Stanley Cup final, so you've gone through 3 rounds, you're into the Stanley Cup final. That means that bare minimum you have played 6 extra home games, bare minimum, and
8,
possibly
right
before the Stanley Cup final.
Oh, before the Stanley. Okay, sure.
So for the first 3 rounds,
minimum 6 up to.
No, you up to 12.
Up to 12, yeah.
Yeah, so you get up to anywhere between 2 and 4 home games per series.
Right.
So anywhere between 6 and 12 extra games beyond what you anticipated having your sponsorship for. Do you really need the extra 4 to take away the integrity of the patch just sits on one side for the Stanley Cup final?
That's fair.
That was my argument toward that. I actually don't even care that they wear the sponsorship patch in the playoffs for the first 3 rounds. You don't get a patch for making the conference final.
Right.
So
that's fair.
So just once you get to the Stanley Cup final, was it really that necessary that we had to, and maybe this doesn't matter in the long run because a new trend is the teams that win the Stanley Cup now all the players get the what are they? I don't want to call it towels because it's like more like scarves almost. They get
I know what you're talking about.
That they drape over their shoulders anyway, so they kind of cover up the part where the patches are anyway.
Right.
But it's like, would you want, do you want those pictures to be,
advertising opportunities?
Here's the captain, here's the Stanley Cup logo, and oh, by the way, the ad's over here, so that you don't clutter. How about don't clutter up the captaincy thing? Clutter up the ad, and
I think that's fair.
And all that type of stuff. But
their argument is that 15 players don't have a letter there. So.
But that's beside the point. Anywho,
yeah. All right. Let's circle over. We got a little bit of draft stuff, then we'll get out of here. Obviously, the draft is on Wednesday, and really the focus has been more on the deals and who's going this, that, what are we getting, what are the assets, what's Danny going to do, because obviously we've seen Danny being very, very active. He's making trades during the Stanley Cup Finals. He's making other trades. He's trying to make other trades 3 days before the draft. But as we sit here, we do actually have to talk about the players they may be selecting at some point here.
Oh, yeah.
So, if the Flyers stay at 7, because obviously as of right now they have 7 and 22 with the potential to pick up 25, 29, maybe some other stuff. Who knows what Danny's doing. But as of right now, I think we're mostly going to focus on this 7 because that is the one that I think we agree they're also most likely to use as opposed to maybe some other transactions elsewhere in the draft. If they stay at 7, are there any names you like here, Kevin?
If they stay at 7, so... I think
the
right
name
away
I keep saying is Ryan Leonard.
And I think that they really like Ryan Leonard. I don't know if he's the number 1 on the list, but I think they really like him. He was mentioned specifically at the pre-draft media availability. I absolutely believe that there is something to it, right?
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Zach Benson. I think that Benson fits let's put it this way. You can do a lot worse than making your first pick as close to a carbon copy of yourself as possible.
Right.
Pick the small guy who scores. But I do like his skill set, and I do think that there was a lot of Russ Cohen noted this, and also I want to make sure I shout that out as well because he pointed it out. They didn't mention Benson by name.
Okay.
Which may be tactical because you're trying to deflect on coming right out and saying, I'm super interested in this guy. Right? Like you're kind of trying to not give away, hey, I really like this player, I would take him.
Right. You don't tell people what your playbook says.
Right. And I think that just generally speaking, if you go through a lot of these, go through mock drafts, go through draft guides, that kind of stuff, most of them are pretty consistent in terms of where the top 4 goes and then beyond. So it's pretty much no secret. The top 4 are going to end up being a combination. Well, Bedard first, and then a combination of Fantilli, Carlson, and Smith, probably.
Drafts don't often have a wild card like Matvei Michkov in them.
Well, I know, and I was about to get there. He
could go as high as 2nd or 3rd, more likely 3rd between the two. He could go as low as, who knows, 11th, 12th, honestly, if things start sliding. He could do the Joe Velino and go all the way to 30. Matvei Michkov is a fascinating prospect.
I don't think he slips any further than 8 at most because I think Washington seems like they're going to be all over that if they get the chance. Listen, the Flyers should be too. Honestly.
You've heard the Yager story, right?
That yes, the story, the Yager story is that everybody was intent on potentially picking him. He told everybody he wasn't going to come over, and then told the Penguins, "Pick me, I'll come."
He talked the first 4 teams he talked to. He told them it would be at least a couple of years. He doesn't know when he's coming. He told the Penguins, "If you draft me, I'll be there."
Right.
And the Penguins drafted him. And I wonder.
What might have been if somebody else had said, "Never mind, we're picking you anyway."
No. I wonder if Matvei Michkov has had similar conversations. I wonder if he has a team in mind. And we've heard about the Washington Capitals. Obviously, there's the Russian connection there. But we also don't know. This is a kid, he's 17 years old. His father passed away this year. He has clearly, gone through a lot. Maybe he's not ready to come over. Maybe it does take him a couple of years. Or maybe he's just waiting for the Washington Capitals to pick him or somebody else.
I don't know about that specifically. Look, the Flyers at the very least need to do due diligence here.
And I'm sure they have.
Well, Briere said they intend to interview him and meet with him. So
Okay.
I fully imagine that is going to, if it hasn't already, is going to take place. Although I'm sitting here looking at the last 24 to 30 hours and going, I don't know when you're supposed to get a meeting in when you're on your phone all day, probably. I don't know. Because I'm sure that Danny Briere's on his phone as much as everybody else is refreshing all day. And things like that, right? But so what I kind of look at with that is and I wondered this, I kind of hinted this to you last week. We really didn't do a lot of draft talk last week. Is that now that they have a second pick in the first round, are they more willing to take a bigger swing with the first one at 7? And I don't, again, I kind of hinted at this earlier in this show, that I don't know if you go and try to figure out a way to move up higher because you want him. Like, I don't think you need, I don't think you should get into a bidding war with Washington, even if he's that good of a player, just to figure out how you can sacrifice more picks to get
just
one
to go to 5 or whatever.
To go to, realistically, to probably go to 6, because there seems to be a lot of consistency about how the top 5, again, is going to be Bedard, Fantilli, Carlson, Smith, and then there's a lot of talk about potentially Leonard at 5. There's been talk about Benson at 5. There's been talk about defenseman, the defenseman Reinbacher going at 5. Okay. And I don't think I would go. If the Flyers are really going to do what I think they need to do, I think the best player available is going to be a forward of some kind. That's nothing. That's nothing against Reinbacher. It's just I think the best player available is going to be a forward, and I think that they know.
Such a good player, though. He's going to be such a good player, Reinbacher.
Reinbacher.
Oh,
I just don't know if I just don't know if I do it at 7 because, I think that there's that many good forwards. I think that they're right.
I agree.
It's that forward heavy. But that's the thing. I think you have to strongly consider Mishkov because not. And I'll tell you another reason why.
I don't think he makes it to you.
Oh, I don't. I kind of don't either. And if he doesn't, then let it play out that way.
Right? Because would you really be stunned if Jarmo Kekalainen took him at 3? Would you be stunned? Really?
A little. No, a little because I think somewhere deep down Columbus thinks okay. Because it's the 3-year factor. Assuming he's got to honor the 3 years of the contract he has in the KHL, I don't think Columbus wants to sit on a 3-year timeline with Gaudreau and Line and what they're trying to add.
I don't necessarily know if they sit on it for 3 years.
You think there's a way that
he's an asset
earlier?
Well, no. He's an asset. I don't think they sit on the asset for 3 years. If he's not willing to come over, you move him.
But then who's going to want him if it becomes a headache?
I think a lot of people know that he's the second best player in this draft, and I don't know for sure if he is. Obviously, Adam Fantilli.
It's close.
There's a lot of good players, but given what Matvei Michkov has done against the competition he's done it against,
yeah,
I'm willing to say he's the second best player in this draft, and the biggest. If he decided he was coming over to the States and he wasn't leaving, he literally left his passport in Russia and just decided I'm staying here. Mm-hmm. I think he goes in the top 3 for sure. Probably second.
I can see that.
Obviously that's not the case though.
No, but I think that every possibility exists with him. It would make total sense if somebody said in the top 5, let's pick him.
Jarmo Kekalainen takes big fat swings, and this is
he does take big fat swings, but
I feel like Jarmo Kekalainen's strategy is always to get the highest skilled player in Columbus for as long as possible. And getting Matvei Michkov, again, even whether it's the player that you intend on using at some point or the asset that you intend on turning into other assets.
Well, then I want you to consider one other thing then with this, because it's probably pretty again, I think it's obvious Mishkov's not going to play this year in the NHL. I mean, he'll play. He's going to play probably KHL. Bedard's obviously going to play NHL.
Obviously,
Fantilli's talked about going back to Michigan.
I wouldn't be surprised if he did.
So I don't know that he's playing NHL next year, which leads me to believe that there's potential that for as good as the draft is advertised to be, that there is potential that only that it may be
that we don't see it this year very much.
That it may be Bedard. And what happens if someone says Carlson's ready? You know what I mean?
Somebody from the top 10 outside of number 1, there's usually somebody from the top 10 who ends up cracking a roster.
I'm just trying to figure out which one it would be though. Like, I mean, like, I don't know which team it would end up being in this case. Like, what if Arizona?
Are you telling me San Jose is not icing whoever they draft?
No, because I think San Jose's taking Smith and he's going to college.
That's fair.
That's
fair.
That's the biggest issue. It's not a matter of that they're not
the availability.
Ready. Well, it's not even that. It's not that they're not willing to ice the player potentially. I think it's that there's so many of these U.S. college commit kids in the top 10, 15, like that.
I don't know. If
if
Montreal does end up taking Reinbacher.
Okay.
Like, you telling me he can't make that team nowadays?
No, that's one that I could see potentially happening. I don't know why. Like, I don't get the sense he's getting taken that high. I mean, if he does, then I know it's not unheard of. Like, I know Montreal seems like they have a likeness for him. I'm not saying that at all.
Well, but, and he's big for that team.
Yeah, I can understand that. But so all right, so we're obviously.
But okay, so if Michkov's there at 7, are you taking him? If you're Danny Briere and Michkov's sitting there, and you're at 7, I'm not saying trading up assets to get him.
No, I know. I think they. Look, we're not going to know exactly what's said in the meeting with him. But if he can calm your nerves enough about, like, if he doesn't say anything
that he's coming eventually.
Well, if he doesn't spark any red flags that make you think there's going to be problems, I think you have to strongly consider it, because if he somehow or other gets to you, I don't know how you're supposed to let that go.
Right.
That's the problem. I mean, you're looking for game changers, and I'm not trying to sit here and say that the average guy who goes at 7 couldn't be. Benson could be a future superstar. Leonard could be a future. You never know. Those are guys that could be around there, and you've got a handful of others. I'll throw out a couple other names really quick. Dvorsky has been one that's been out there. Oliver Moore's been out there a little bit. Those are guys I think you have to, like, you're going to give some attention to, and then,
sure. And
it gets really interesting after that, because like that teenish area, like, and this is something to watch for, by the way, because I do want to make sure that we don't.
Well, I was going to ask you how many draft picks do the Flyers end up with in the first round? I'm going to set the over under at 2.5.
I would take the over there. I think that somehow or other in the nenext 3 days they end up with another first based on what they're working on.
See, I'm still going to take the under, because I do think they're going to end up with another first, but I think you trade up.
You know what? I lean the opposite way.
You'd rather trade down and get some seconds? And
it's not that I'd rather. It's not that I'd rather. That's
what you think they're going to?
I think that's a strong possibility. I mean,
listen, the cupboard is bare, right? There are not a whole lot of high-end prospects in the Flyers system.
I mean, okay.
I wouldn't be sad about it.
Okay, I want you. Let me do something really quick, because I'm looking at, like, I'm obviously looking at a prospect list for a second to kind of go over names really quick. But
yeah,
let me just confirm, as because the whole draft order was out. So just let me confirm something really quick for the whole draft, and kind of just put this into perspective as we kind of get to the not the second round, but towards into the second pick area and things like that, because I'm just thumbing through here just to try to figure out where, kind of where some other picks are. All right. I mean, that's the same spot, but all right. But for all intents and purposes, let's just start there. If you're the Flyers and you somehow or other get a third first round pick from another team, whether it's St. Louis or otherwise, right? So now let's just say, hypothetically speaking, you have 29. If Washington wants Michkov that badly, do you let them trade the spot and see how desperate they are, which would include the 40th overall pick?
Oh, yeah.
And then give yourself 8 and 3 more by the top 40.
Absolutely. I would do that. I don't know if they would. But yeah, I would absolutely.
No, because I don't know that they would either, because my intention is kind of more along the lines of you start to look for the other teams that have another pick to give, so to speak. Like you get to this isn't a team with a third first-round pick, but you get to where, like, if you get to Arizona territory and you say, listen, Arizona trade up from 12 to 7, and you could end up with they also so then you could end up down at 12 and also get 38. That's a possibility. I believe there's one more. I mean, depending on how long the St. Louis saga goes on for, could you play that card and say, hey, listen, we'll drop 3 spots to 10, give us 25 while you're at it, or 29. If that's how much it's worth to you to get 3 spots difference. You know what I mean? Like, you got to start looking for the teams that have something more than just either that, or it's the teams that you start to look at and you go, okay, if you're a team like Nashville at 15, you have a pick at 24 that you could talk about, or you could also grab one of their 2 second-rounders that they have back-to-back at 46 and 47 and say, so give us 15 and 46.
Right.
I think that, but I think that's your common goal, correct? Like,
sure,
play with that top 10-ish range of the second round and say, can we get back in for something like that?
Well, and it also depends on who's on your list, who you've looked at, who you've liked, where they're going to go. There's a lot that goes into the draft, and Danny Briere has only had the keys for about 6 weeks. Well, I know he was with the team, but.
And this is where I was going with it, because when you start to get into the teen range, you really get into some interesting names, especially if you do have 2 picks in the first round later on. I mean, Tom Willender's one. He's a defenseman. If he's a Swedish defenseman, no less, playing in the SHL, so that's pretty high marks already. If that's a name that is available, that's, and once you get into the 20s, I'd be jumping all over that. Gabriel Perreault is one who I would keep an eye on. I think he'll be long gone by the 20s, but you got to keep an eye on it depending on what the lists are. Quentin Musty is another good name to keep an eye out for. But there's a couple that I see that kind of look. They could go anywhere from 15 to 25. Let's just say hypothetically. I mean, and they could go anywhere else too. I don't want to make it seem like it's whatever. But Dmitry Simashev is a name that I think is going to be very popular among the defenseman market. He may turn like. Listen, Reinbacher could turn out to be exactly what you think he's going to be. There's a lot of people who also kind of think that Simashev could be the best one to come out of this thing.
Okay.
Defensively. So I would definitely look at him. There was one more, or at least 1 or 2 more that I wanted to get in there before we were done as well. Gavin Brindley, who's a Michigan product, I think would be a really good pickup in the 20s. And you can go down, like, there's lists beyond that. Charlie Strammel's a good one. That's a Wisconsin kid. Callum Ritchie, who's a center for Oshawa in the OHL.
I like his game a lot.
I saw who was one. Again, and this is going to be another guy who I think is long gone by then. But if you're playing if he drops, let's see what happens kind of thing. I do think that you have to keep an eye out in the event that that either Braden Yeager, who's a center in the WHL, or Colby Barlow, who's a winger in the OHL. Those I think they're gone top 15. If I'm being honest, like I could see that, but see, this is the thing.
But we've seen stranger things happen. They could trade up. Like, there's all sorts of possibility for what could happen.
We've seen stranger things happen with teams' lists. And what if you do get a second first round pick that's in the 20s and start thinking, hey, this guy's still hanging around at 17. I got to find a way to put something together, and that's what you use.
I could see that.
That becomes way more of a realistic possibility. So, and that's just the first round. I do think they have. I mean, right now as we speak, and again, things obviously subject to change all over the place potentially.
Sure.
They have 10 picks in the draft. They have the 2 in the first round, and then they don't pick again until the third round. But they have 8 picks on day 2. I know that they didn't exactly give a super definitive answer when saying this, but I stand by what I said last week and agree this week. I think that there is a strong possibility that they will take a goalie on day 2. I do think as you start to get into the range of maybe getting into a spot where you draft but more by positional need than you do. I mean, it doesn't happen frequently, and I think they'll stick to their list, but I think that based on not based on that, but it's like I just can see them maybe scattering some of the picks to try to make sure they get a few defensemen in, make sure they get some other forwards in. The one of the big things you got to do from rounds 3 to 7, once you get to the day 2 portion of this, is you got to start coming up with some finds.
Yeah,
you got to start coming
you're
up with guys.
Stocking your cupboard, you're setting the groundwork, you're starting to kind of build your future.
But you got to hope that somewhere in 8 picks on day 2 that one maybe one of the third rounders or something like you know
pop a gem.
Well, yeah, I mean, like you're looking to find your Braden Point, your Jamie Benn, your whatever, like somebody who you get way down the line that you don't think is going to be like you're not thinking NHL regular maybe right off the bat. You're thinking project at the beginning, and the project, especially considering all of the other stuff, with the development side of things.
Right, and that's what I was going to mention is that this. Obviously, we've already seen the Ivan Provorov trade out of Danny Briere, but this draft and obviously all that goes around it is kind of his first big test as the GM. And we've talked about kind of the longer term stuff about the player development and what he does over a long period of time. But this is Danny Briere's first real crack at changing the roster. We saw the Ivan Provorov trade and that changed the roster, but not as much as it's going to change over the next week.
Oh yeah,
we're going to, like I mentioned earlier, we're going to be back in about 10 days. We're looking at shortly after the 4th for our next show. And it's going to be a different Flyers roster. There's going to be trades. There's going to be the draft. It's going to be very different.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of stuff. I will really quick before we get out of here hit any of the most recent stuff. There's not really anything concrete.
Okay.
But if you're trying to play the read between the lines game, just a little bit, there's not really a follow-up to the whole movement on Torrey Krug and the no-move clause thing. But if you happen to check out Torrey Krug's Twitter profile right now, apparently he has removed all references of the St. Louis Blues from his bio. He had a cover picture that apparently involved something with the Blues. That is gone. And one of his most, if not his most... His most recent is from 6 hours ago. It's from the NHL's Czech site, and it says David Pastrnak would like his friend Torrey Krug to return to Boston.
It's David Pastrnak retweeting "Bring Torrey home." Well, now I don't read too much into Twitter likes, typically speaking, and I'm not here either. But that's very interesting.
So let me just, because Dan Silver, who is part of the OMB Puckcast, which I've gone on several times, great guy, brought this up for those looking to cling to any glimmers of hope. He removed any references from the to the Blues. On Twitter and Instagram within the past few hours. There used to be a Blues background. Take this how you will. Maybe
there's no background now.
No, take this as you will. Maybe he's just mad at them, which is a very valid point, honestly.
Fair.
But,
what if it's more than that?
But, okay, one more quick thing to not clear the air, but one more quick thing, because I saw a lot of people who were trying to sit there and say that all this stuff and all this information that's up in the air and all these hypotheticals and speculation and things and leaking and all that stuff like that is really showing the inexperience of the Flyers front office that this much has gotten out of whatever. No. I think that, I'm sorry, first of all, the first reports came out of St. Louis to begin with, number one. And number two, I just don't, this happens all the time.
Yeah.
Stuff like this happens all the time.
Well, and it also does seem as though most of the genesis of this story is leaking out of the St. Louis side as opposed to the Philadelphia Flyers side. Don't
get me wrong. I think that there's plenty of elements of it that are coming from the Flyers side, but honestly, maybe one more last quick reference to the Crossing Broad Anthony Sanfilippo story.
Yep.
Just for the purpose of bringing this back around, because he was talking about checking with sources in both areas. So people on both sides know information. They will give it. That's how these things.
That's how sources work, right?
Well, and not only that, but sources don't always mean people in the front office. Sources also can mean agents. So if a player agent is trying to tell you, hey, this guy's possibly in the deal. Or like here's a perfect example, and I don't know this off the top of my head, so I'm just throwing it out there as a hypothetical. If you're trying to get information about which St. Louis defenseman is the one with the no move clause that's in the deal, how easy is it for a reporter in St. Louis to be able to confirm with Nick Leddy's agent or Colton Parayko's agent and say, is it?
It's not him, is it?
Well, or to at least get an answer, or maybe sometimes that can come without prompting. By the way, that you can speculate. Well, they've got this many guys with no move clauses. There's a defenseman in the deal, and then somebody
just get a tweet,
and
you just get a text,
right, and then somebody steps forward and goes, "It's not Nick Leddy.
It's not Parayko, right?"
Or they don't say that. They can just say, "It's not my guy."
Right.
And then you'll know who they're talking about, and that's how
Sure.
you cross it off the list, and that's how you feel comfortable reporting something like that. But that's like, we'll see where it goes. I listen, it could be either. It could mean either thing. We'll see. I mean,
Yeah.
The two words I left you with last week were buckle up, and boy, did I apparently mean it without knowing what's going to happen. I say that again for this week until we talk again, because
buckle up.
It's not well. And here's the thing: it very much is a roller coaster ride right now that they're having you buckle up on, because the last 24 hours were a kind of slow incline from Kevin Hayes to all of this. That's the top of the hill where the drop comes in, and you're now sailing. It's a rush for a certain period of time, and then it kind of just goes quiet for a little while, like it's been, and it has been. And
but in the meantime, we're on the high, we're riding the ride, and if you want to go along for that ride, you can follow us on Twitter at YWT Podcast. Make sure to also follow Kevin at Kevin_Durso. You can find us anywhere you find your show. Like I said earlier, we will be back in about 10 days. We will have a lot of coverage for you. We'll have all the post-draft. I assume there's going to be some more pre-draft activities. We'll have pre-draft, we'll have post-draft, we'll have free agency. Insane. We probably won't have new jerseys, but we'll have everything else in the meantime. This is Danny Briere's first real test, and on our next show, we will give him a grade for what he's done so far. I'll throw that out here.
Yeah, hopefully, because there's a lot of things up in the air right now, and I kind of would like some resolutions sooner or later.
And so far, he's got a good track record. I think we both liked the Ivan Provorov trade, but can he keep it up? And we'll be back in about a week and a half to figure it out. So in the meantime, like I said, follow us on the socials, subscribe to us on YouTube. We're really trying to grow over there. You find us anywhere you find your podcast: Facebook, Instagram, Podbean, iTunes, Google Podcasts, sportstalkphilly.com. We're everywhere. In the meantime, Kevin, it's distraction season. We're all in. We'll see ya.